Hi, I'm Dan from Cambridge University Press, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how to teach remotely with Empower and show you some tips and tricks that you can use in your virtual classroom. Welcome to my virtual classroom. So as always, before we begin, I'll just take you through what you can see on screen, starting in the top right hand corner over here. So this is Zoom. This is the piece of software that we'll be using as our virtual classroom in today's video. In the top right hand corner here is a participants list, which will show you everyone who's in attendance. Down in the bottom right hand corner is our chat box where you can send messages to and receive messages from students. On the left is our video, and just below are a number of buttons. Now, I will be going into some of these buttons in today's video, but if you would like more detailed information about how these work and how Zoom works in general, then head over to the World of Better Learning blog and search for Carol Rainbow's video series on how to use Zoom. Down in the bottom right hand corner is our How to Teach Remotely with Empower guide, and on the left hand side are the corresponding pages of the student's book. We will be going through class 1 in today's video. Okay, let's make a start. So before we begin the lesson, I just wanted to make a quick point about the How to Teach Remotely guides. So we're very much promoting a flipped classroom approach. That is to say that the exercises in the student's book will have already been completed by the students before they come to the live lesson. That means, therefore, that you can use the live lesson as a platform for students to check their answers, to raise any questions about the exercises, and it allows you to really maximize your teaching and focus in on the areas that the students might be struggling with. So at the top of the page is our Can Do Objectives box, and in today's lesson we're going to be looking at the first objective, say your name and country. Now, it's always nice to show students this Can Do Objectives box at the beginning of the lesson to show them what they're working towards, and also at the end of the lesson as well to show them what they have achieved. The first activity of the lesson is down at the bottom of page 7 in the Getting Started box just here. Now, there are 2 questions for the students to look at. The first one is to ask the students to look at the picture. That's this picture here with the flags and the moon, and to say what countries they can see. And the second question is to ask them what other countries they know in English. Now, let's look at question A. And let's presuppose then that the students have completed this exercise before coming to the live lesson. Now, you might want to start by asking them to compare their answers in pairs or small groups. Now, to do that, you can use the breakout rooms. So if you just click on breakout rooms here, you can see how many participants you've got. So let's say, for example, you want to put them into pairs. You have 6 participants. Then you want to create 3 separate breakout rooms. And then you can manually assign 2 students to each room. And to ask them then to compare their answers. Now, to do this, you can ask them to share their screen. It might be quite nice to do this actually, because then it's easier for each student to see what the other student is referring to, and then they can use their mouse cursor to go through each flag and say what the country is, and perhaps note this down somewhere separately, or if they've already noted it down prior to that, to use those notes. And so if each pair does this and each group does this, then after a few minutes of checking their answers, bring them back into the main room. And by main room, I mean this room here. And then you, as a class, can check the answers. Now, I think a nice interactive way of doing this is to actually share the PDF yourself and invite students to annotate that PDF with what they think is the correct answer. So to do that, if you hit share screen, and if you click on your PDF and hit share, that will bring up this annotation tool, this bar at the top, one of which is the annotate tool. If you click that, that will then bring up a series of different features. And it's not only you who can use these features on the shared screen, it's also your students as well. So you can actually invite them to draw on your PDF and the whole class can see this. Now, that's a really nice way, I think, of confirming, or for the students to check their answers with you. So, for example, you can invite each pair to label one flag, and then go round and then back round the pairs until all the flags have been labelled. So one way to do this is to use the draw feature. If they hit draw, they can then draw a line from a flag and then press the text icon box here, and then they can type their country in. And after they've typed the country in, you can then invite the other participants, the other students in the class, to say whether they think that's correct or not. Not just whether the flag and the country is correct, but whether the spelling of that country is correct as well. And then if they think so, if you think it's correct, you can either give your answer now or perhaps wait and just come back until all of the countries have been labelled. So that's one option that you can use, and I think a nice option to for the students to check their answers. Quite an interactive way of doing that as well. Now, by the end of that small task, what you'll have on the PDF just here then is a labelled document. So all those flags there will be labelled. Now, what you might like to do, one option to confirm the answers, to say yes, that's correct or no, that's wrong, is to play the audio. Now, this audio is a small dialogue between two speakers who are talking about this image, and they're talking about the flags and identifying them. So as a listening task, you might want to play that audio, ask the students to listen and check to see if their answers are correct. Now, before moving on, I just wanted to highlight a really small but really nice feature that you can use about listening. So let's go over and do that now. So one nice feature of Adobe is that you can add sounds into PDFs, and this is really good if you are using the same course, for example in Power, with multiple classes. What you can do is add a sound, locate it next to the corresponding track in the book, so that when you come back to that stage of the lesson in the future, the audio is there and ready to play. So to do that, if you come up to Tools and you type in Audio, that will bring up two options. Now, I'm using Adobe Acrobat Pro, which gives me these two options. If you're using Adobe Acrobat, the free version, it will just bring up this option here, but you can do the same thing or something similar. If you click on Add a New Attachment and then Attach File, that'll bring up a paperclip that you can then drag to where the track icon is in the book, and then link that audio icon to your audio file. But for now, we're going to use Add Sound. So let's click on Add Sound. And if we draw a box, that will bring up an Insert Sound box. Click on Choose, and then locate the folder where your audio tracks are saved. And we're looking for track 1.3. That's just here. Click Open, click OK, and that will bring up an audio button. And then you can play that audio. If you right click, one tip and this is what I do in live lessons, is if you right click, click Enable Content, and then if you click View in Floating Window, it brings up a bigger audio icon bar that's a little bit more manageable. And there's some really nice features. You can rewind, you can fast forward, you can adjust the volume, and you can play the audio as well.
What countries can you see?
So a really nice way there of adding audio to PDFs to help speed up finding the audio if you're using the same course across multiple classes. Question B then is asking what other countries the students know in English. Now, you might be tempted to use the chat box for this and invite the students to type in the names of the countries that they know. I suppose one issue might be that this can get out of control. If you've got lots of students in your class and they're typing in lots of countries, that chat box is going to move really quickly. So it might be difficult for other students to keep up. So I think one activity that works really nicely in virtual classrooms is to give the students a blank map of the world and ask them to label it with the countries that they know. Not only does that test the other countries that they know, but also where they are in the world as well. So you can send students into breakout rooms in pairs or in groups. They can share their screen and they can annotate the same blank map of the world. You can give them 7 to 8 minutes to do this, or if that's a bit too long, reduce the time. You can of course go in and monitor in the breakout room so you can see how they're getting on, and if they've run out of ideas you can then bring them back into the main room. So perhaps something like this. Give them a blank map of the world, and they can, using that annotate tool of the share screen that we saw earlier, they can label this map. Then once they've done that, you can bring them back into the main room and you can invite each group or each pair to share their screen and show the maps that they've labelled. You can check them, you can ask other students to check them as well, say what's correct, what's incorrect, correct where necessary, and that'll be a nice way, I think, for the students to share their answers and their ideas for question B. So page 8 of the lesson is introducing students to reading and grammar with the aim of teaching them how to say their name and country. Now I'll quickly go through each stage of the lesson and show you how I might do these stages in a live lesson, starting with stage A over here. So this is track icon 1.4. So if I'm not using the interactive ebook prior to the lesson, I would pin the audio track 1.4 to part A so that I could play it easily, and then play it, ask the students to listen and repeat, listen and repeat as a form of drilling exercise before moving on to part B, which is getting the students to read and listen to conversations 1 to 3, that's these here, and matching the conversations with the groups of people A to C. Now at this point I would share my screen using the annotate tool, getting the students to match the conversations, drawing a line to the people A to C. We'll then move on to part C, completing the sentences in the table, again via the shared screen feature with the annotate tool, asking the students to type in their answers into the fields here and checking and correcting where necessary before moving on to the grammar focus for more practice and more correction of the grammar. We then move on to a pronunciation exercise, sound and spelling long and short sounds. So again, this is an audio track, so playing the audio, getting the students to repeat and correcting where necessary. Just one quick tip on the audio. If you're using a headset or if you have headphones in, don't forget just to take them out of the back of the computer so that when you play the audio, it will go through your microphone so the students can hear it at the other end. And then, so practicing saying those words, etc., before moving on to parts F and G, which are the communicative activities to round off the lesson. In part F, the students are practicing the conversations in 1B. Now, you'll know your class best, so if you've got perhaps some shy students who don't like speaking in front of the whole group, you might like to use the breakout rooms to give students a private place to practice the conversations. You can go in to the breakout rooms and you can monitor and correct accordingly. Or if your class are perhaps a little bit more confident, you can invite each pair of students to read a conversation in front of the rest of the group and take turns and go round the class. One thing I really like doing here, and I think students find this really, really good fun, is to show students their language in real time. And what I mean by that is to use speech-to-text software. So one way of doing this is to go into Google Docs. If you go in, click on Tools, click on Voice Typing, this will bring up a microphone. You can then invite each pair of students to read out a conversation. When they begin, click the microphone and this will record everything they're saying and they can see this whilst they are speaking. When they're finished, click off, and then in real time you can show them any mistakes that they've made and highlight them. And I think this is a really, really nice feature, and students in the past that I've taught have found this really engaging because it's not every day that they can see their language being reproduced, and speech-to-text software is a really good way of showing this. In part G, the students are practicing the same conversations in 1B, but they're using their own name and country. Now, another option that you might like to do to practice this is to use the breakout rooms, but to actually rotate the class, almost like a speed dating activity. So if you assign students into pairs, assign them into a breakout room, then you can, after say 20 seconds, pull a student out and drop them into different breakout rooms so they can rotate. So you can assign them, reassign them, and each time they're reassigned, get them to practice introducing themselves and where they're from until you go around every pair, and so everyone's spoken to everyone in the class, and then you can come back and then you can ask students at the end of the lesson to introduce other people. So to finish the lesson, you can go back to the can-do objectives that we saw at the beginning. You can highlight the objectives, say your name and your country, and you can ask your students via the share screen and share PDF option to annotate with a stamp to say that they have achieved that objective. So that was how to teach remotely with Empower. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned some nice tips and tricks that you can use in your virtual classrooms. And I hope that's given you the confidence to go into your virtual classrooms and teach English. So for more information, for more articles and insights about teaching English online, head over to the World of Better Learning blog. But in the meantime, stay safe and thank you very much for watching.